I wasn't planning on making this video, but you all loved my out of the theater reaction. So after finishing my holiday, sleeping a few nights on it, and traveling halfway across the world back home, I think I'm finally ready. My name is Ren, and this is my review of Madam Web. Welcome back, Spider Family. Thank you for joining me, because if you are joining me for this very late review, you have a morbid sense of curiosity regarding my take on Madam Web, a film everyone and their cousin has become obsessed with having an opinion on, for better or worse. People have even become obsessed with having opinions on other people's opinions on Madam Web, despite its box office shortcomings suggesting otherwise. Forced to confront revelations about her past, paramedic Cassandra Webb forges a relationship with three young women destined for powerful futures, safeguarding them from a deadly adversary who wants to destroy them in the present. I have never been shy regarding my feelings towards Sony's Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe. From day one, I have been loudly against making a Madam Web movie. And it's important for me to start this review with that because I am making this video in a world where everyone from the internet to the stars of the film being against it. And while it's fun that everyone else sees what I see, it feels like I'm punching down even making this video. It's not fun anymore. Even when Chris Stuckman suggests an open, adult, complex conversations about the pros and cons of this film's very existence, the internet fell down on him. So I'm just going to give you my honest thoughts. If you enjoy Madam Web, that's great. I wish I could too, because this isn't a film without merit. For all the faults it has, and we'll get to all of them, the visual effects in this film look great. They don't look interesting, but they look great. It is clear for all to see, like the movie or not, this is a polished, well-financed studio tentpole production with talent both in front and behind the camera. Dakota Johnson seems to have angered the internet, but she is a great actress, and whenever she's not speaking the dialogue written for her, she can convey or attempt to convey some really good emotion. Particularly in the paramedic scenes, which are probably my favorites in the film, it's just refreshing to see a superhero that's already a hero without their powers, especially when their powers are the most uninteresting part of the film. Regarding casting, that's all the good things I have to say. I think everyone was believably cast in their roles, but how the characters are written is an entirely different conversation. I like how Madam Web visualizes her powers in this film. There's an interesting look to it, but they only use it twice in this film, at the very beginning and at the very end. And as we know, the internet has been making fun of this film ever since the first and only trailer came out for it back in October, I think. And if you didn't like Madam Web, if you didn't like that trailer, the movie is very much a reflection on that. By now, we know there were a lot of changes after Dakota Johnson signed on, after they shot this, they reworked it, they reshot it, the script kept changing, and it's apparent from the final product because this entire film feels like it's combating itself. All its vague ideas are so ill-defined, they keep colliding because the intentions of it all are so unclear. And it's not like Madam Web is a unique superhero film structurally or narrative. It has a ton of the tropes, a ton of the cliches, a ton of the elements that usually work in superhero films, as much as a ton of elements that usually don't work with superhero films. But the biggest problem with Madam Web is when you have this collection of elements, of tropes, of cliches, of themes, narrative ideas, is that Madam Web pulls off the worst possible version of each of these elements. And so you get a film that is so uninterested in the story it has to tell. It convolutes its way to finding solutions in the most basic, unengaging, uninteresting way possible. This entire film is a collection of sequences of our supposed heroes running away from our bad guy. They don't have intentions at all. They don't have goals or motivations throughout this film. Madam Web, despite being our lead character, our protagonist, feels like an afterthought when it comes to the superhero realm. Like I said, whenever you go into the superhero elements of this film, it's when it's at its most uninteresting. That is a big problem with a superhero film. But I was my most engaged with Madam Web as a character whenever she was being a paramedic. There's an interesting dichotomy to Cassandra Webb in this film where she is a paramedic, clearly a very good one. However, she's not a people person. She is very awkward, socially speaking. She does not get along with people. She doesn't care for gifts. Kids of the people she saved give to her. She is very awkward at a baby shower where she's hanging out with Mary Parker, who's pregnant with a name Sony refuses to say as if they didn't own the property, but we'll get to that later. Madam Web is so frustrating because it has all the pieces to deliver a serviceable, maybe solid, maybe good superhero film that is a throwback to the early 2000s with its aesthetic, the soundtrack that it chooses, even though it refused to give us a new Nickelback song where you have Julia Cornwall, Maddie Franklin, Anya Corazon, and a bad guy who's after them. So why is Madam Web even in this film? It's as if Sony had a great movie with 3 spider people but thought, hey, let's put this new character in there and make it all revolve around her. And the film just doesn't work. It's a tangled mess within itself. Everyone has said that joke, but it's apt right now. It's a web of all these convoluted decisions that made the movie worse. And every single decision, every single direction the script takes makes this movie worse. And this is your perhaps delayed spoiler warning. I will be talking Madam Web freely and openly. Feel free to do the same in the comments. The film's been out since Wednesday. Nobody's interested in seeing it, and I understand why. From the very beginning, Madam Web feels off. From performances that feel directionless to dialogue that is extremely unpolished. A film that opens in the Peruvian Amazon. They couldn't even get the real Amazon, and a pregnant woman is saved by a tribe of magical spider people who give birth to her baby in a lake and predict not only her return to search for answers, but her powers, her importance to the entire world. This silliness is just how the movie starts, and it doesn't get better. It gets sillier, but the film seems entirely unaware how stupid everything that it does and how it comes across on screen with its own self-seriousness, to the point that every sequence feels like a reshoot, feels like they're trying to reverse engineer and fix where they started off from. This webbed person that dresses with tree trunks is dressed completely normal when Cassandra Webb does go back near the end of the film to search for answers. I just like to imagine what if she wasn't interested in the answers and this dude dresses like a regular human being just waiting for her until he fucking dies. What makes the unexplained existence of this magical jungle spider tribe all the more frustrating but also hilarious is that in contrast to that, the spider people in this film, Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, Isabela Merced, essentially the pillars of the entire marketing campaign behind Madam Web, are not even spider people in the film. The suits, which look great, the powers, all the great sequences that were teased about, were not even teased about. We've seen it all in the marketing. Those sequences are in the future. They do not have their powers in this film. They don't have their suits in this film. It's all visions the bad guy has and wants to kill them for it. His entire motivation, his goal in this film is essentially, I don't want to die. However, this dude only started having visions after stealing a spider from Cassandra Webb's mother in the Amazon right before she died. So what was his goal before? Why did he want the spider? How is that a compelling motivation for him? How is this a compelling motivation for anyone? Because if his motivation is, I don't want to die, so is everyone else's. Everyone else is completely uninterested in this dude and they just want to run away. This entire film is one man chasing these three teenage girls and the person who just happens to go, I don't want that to happen. It is so basic. It is so unengaging as a plot, as a narrative. It has no forward momentum to itself whatsoever. The only time our heroes and our villain communicate even when Madame Web has a vision within a dream of talking to him. The heroes, the villains, they don't have a relationship. And this dude only finds them because he steals this highly advanced technology from the NSA in 2003. And he has all these flat screens. And a person who just shows up in the film, they never explain who she is. They never say her name. They never tell us how they know each other. This person is just there and instantly finds these people. They find Cassandra Webb when they see her face. They find Ben Parker, and I'll get to Ben Parker in a bit. This film is so lazy at setting up its sequences, at building a story that builds on itself. Not to say that it's easy, because making a film isn't easy, writing a film isn't easy, and I certainly do not blame any of the writers or S.J. Clarkson, who has an incredible resume when it comes to her TV work. That is caliber, that is quality. This film feels like it has its strings being pulled by studio execs who really don't know what to do, as they've consistently proven with the rest of this universe thus far. If you're a film fan at all, you're well aware how Warner Brothers, and particularly their CEO David Zaslav, have become infamous for killing movies, destroying the passion and the hard work of thousands of artists, only to use those films as tax write-offs. Madame Web feels like a film only released as a tax write-off. Perhaps the worst example of all the issues and the brain-dead decisions that have plagued this entire Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe, where the villain gets killed by falling and having a sign fall on top of them, where Madame Web all of a sudden can split her body into three, but the most she does with it is just lifting other people up. Literally, they're falling. You're okay. You're gonna be okay. That's the climax of this film, where there are literal fireworks going off because everything else is so uninteresting. Our heroes don't actually directly fight our villain. They just stall. They distract him. So you need literal fireworks in the background going off to distract from how dull everything is. The editing is jarring. Continuity mistakes are very common. They are overblown a lot of the time, but this film is riddled with them. Where in the final battle, so many moments where this dude is in his knockoff Spider-Man suit, which, by the way, who made that suit for him? Why does he want a suit made? He walks barefoot everywhere. He can crawl on top of trains, but he never really uses these powers. He doesn't actually have, like, Madam Web, the movie, is so uninterested in its characters, is so afraid of its own mythos, it's so ashamed of its origins. This is an entire film that alludes to Spider-Man Easter eggs, but refuses to pay any of them off. It refuses to give any of these characters a compelling narrative. It refuses to create compelling dynamics between them, where there is one moment where you see Madam Web and the three girls bond over giving someone CPR if they are in trouble. That's the only thing in this film that gets paid off. That's the only thing in this film that works. Because again, the best part of this film is Cassandra Webb being a paramedic. While at the same time, she is accused of kidnapping three teenage girls in broad daylight in New York. She runs over our villain with a car two times in this film. The second time in an ambulance, and it is absolutely hilarious, where she smashes through the wall of a building, jumps perfectly into him, but doesn't touch the car or the people inside the car that he's standing on. It is the most baffling decision making, going back to the editing again, where it's just all so confusing, and it's the worst, the most boring possible version of how any of these events can play out. The film is so ashamed of being connected to Spider-Man, where they put Uncle Ben in the film, played by Adam Scott, which could have been great if he played a better role in this. But one of the interactions he has with Madam Web at the beginning, before Cassie develops clairvoyance, is that he's met someone and she's special, but they refuse to say her name in the entire film. They do not pay that off. They do not give us an actress playing Aunt May. They do not say her name is May. They have Emma Roberts pregnant, having a baby shower, keeping the baby's name a secret, where every time she's going to say the name of the baby, a balloon pops or Madame Web has to go because she has a vision. And by the end, when everyone is put into danger because they have to leave the house so she can give birth to Peter Parker, even though they refuse to say the name, everyone compliments Ben for being a great uncle. He has all the fun of being a parent with none of the responsibility. You know who says that? Madam Web. So she sees that her partner is going to die one day because he is an uncle. She says, oh, he has no idea. At one point early in the film, she mocks him for never getting shot in Queens. So by the end of this film, she sees what's going to happen to him, and she does nothing. Remember how I said Madam Web isn't an interesting character except when she's a paramedic? She's also a very unlikable character. That's not necessarily a problem, but when you're unlikable and you're uninteresting, you're a horrible, horrible protagonist. Sony is so afraid. It's like they don't own this property. I wish they didn't, because movies like this, the hard work of artists like Dakota Johnson, like S. Shay Clarkson, Sydney Sweeney, everyone else in the cast, everyone else in the crew would not go to waste. This feels like an irresponsible use of studio finance. A film that does absolutely no favors for the characters it's adapting, the universe Sony is trying to build, and really for the franchise as a whole. It feels like a stain on the name Spider-Man. In a world where we have the Home trilogy, the Sam Raimi movies, we even have Spider-Verse. And this is what they choose to do with their time, their resources, their finances, and most importantly, their talent. It's a waste, and it's a shame we have movies like this being released where all the power, all the passion, all the hard work of artists gets thrown away. That's my biggest issue with Madam Web, is that it is so clear a film that was entirely created and executed and worked in post production under the iron fist rule of studio execs who have all the money, but they took over all the creative and story decisions. And clearly, it did not pay off. But those are just my thoughts on Madam Web. It's time for you to start the conversation about it in the comments below. Are you a fan of any of the Spider-Man-less Spider-Man Sony movies? Are you excited for Kraven the Hunter? Anything and everything down there. If you're enjoying this review, want to see me talk more Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies, I reviewed the Venom movies and Morbius right up here, and I will be reviewing Kraven the Hunter. So if you want to see more talk on movies and TV with me, this is the place to be. Consider clicking that subscribe button, and you won't miss any future conversations on your favorite movies and TV. Madam Web fills me with sorrow for every creative involved in what feels like a hostage situation led by misguided, cynical studio executives. It has big first draft energy. It's directionless, dispassionate, and overall baffling, with a muddled narrative, vague ideas, and unexisting motivations. Madam Web can't even get to so bad it's good. It's just so bad, it's disheartening. A movie that doesn't really feel like a movie, more so money laundering, and a new low for the Sony Spider-Man-less universe. I'm giving Madam Web an F. Thank you so much for watching, Spider Family. Don't forget to start the conversation in the comments below. Is this your least favorite Spider-Man adjacent film? Is there any other you dislike more? Anything and everything down there. And I'll be back very soon with reviews for Avatar: The Last Airbender, Dune Part 2, and Shogun. Stay tuned for all of those. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.